Ellen, ready to go? We'll go ahead and start.
I didn't know it, so.
All right, Ms. Tessier's arrival is imminent, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome back. Glad you didn't leave and not come back. I'm glad to see everybody. We gave you a lot of material last time. In talking with Ed and Fran, I want us to really focus on the enabling legislation, and there's a couple shalls. And one of the things early on, after that, talks about the appointment. This is under tab 1. The first thing they tell us to do is elect a chair and vice chair from the membership. They also elect a secretary who may or may not be a member of the authority. So, I think we should do that. Technically, the commissioners were the board for a period of time. They elected me chairman, but I would prefer if we had a separate election just with this board on that issue, and then any other, and then we'll take up the vice chair, because the enabling legislation does talk about both right off the bat, and it says shall also elect a secretary who may or may not be a member of the authority. So let's talk about that first, and then we'll, if it's all right with you, we don't really have operating rules yet, but we did give an agenda. Again, kind of tried to get feedback from everybody. We don't have to do it this way, but I would suggest, if it's all right with the board for this meeting, just to go ahead and kind of go this way. And if that's all right to proceed, we haven't really got operating rules, nor an official chairman or vice chair for that matter. So,
should we do that business first then?
yeah, I think since that's the first thing on the enabling legislation, I really think we need to stick with that. We've already been appointed, you know your terms. So the next thing it says to do is elected chair and vice chair from the membership.
Would we do that in the same motion?
Let's do them separate.
Okay.
Okay, is there a nomination for chair?
I'll nominate David Gant for chair of the CRA. Second.
I'd be glad to do that. Any other nominations? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And that is a 7-0. But thank you. I will do my best. Vice chair, any nominations?
I'd like to nominate George Briggs.
Second. Mr. Briggs has been nominated, second by Mr. Kern. Is there any discussion?
Another nomination.
Another nomination?
Matthew Kern.
Okay. Matthew Kern has been nominated. Okay. Any other nominations? All right. Both gentlemen willing to serve?
I think I'm actually going to have to decline.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. Sure.
All right. Any other nominations for vice chair? Now, is there a motion to elect Mr. Briggs by acclamation?
So moved.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Mr. Briggs, vice chair.
I'll do my best today. Right now, your best.
George has created a arboretum from nothingness. So, thank you. There's also needs to be, according to this, it says shall also elect a secretary who may or may not be a member of the authority. What's the pleasure on that one? And any feedback about?
I would recommend that Angie Hall is not here today. She is the staff intention to serve as clerk to the board, and that we appoint Sally Warren, who is here today, as the deputy.
All right.
And I think that will satisfy the wants.
All right. Okay. Is there a motion, Mr. Buckner? Mr. Buckner, is that a motion for, let's see, Amy?
It's Angie.
Angie and
Last name is Hall.
Angie Hall.
And Sally Warren.
Sally Warren is deputy, and Sally's filling in today. Thank you. Okay, are there any other nominations? All those in favor of Angie Hall as secretary and Sally Warren as deputy secretary, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Thank you to Ms. Warren here today, and Ms. Hall will get the good news later, I guess. Okay, the next on the agenda is to talk about the operating rules of the board. You know, I've served on boards that didn't do these for a long time to see how we did things. I would suggest we go ahead and pass them and then change them as we go, but I'll leave that. What's the pleasure of the authority?
I apologize, David. Could you repeat what you said?
Sure. The next on the agenda is to discuss operating rules and procedures, which is under tab 2. You know, you haven't had a lot of time. This is pretty much how we do the commission, I believe. Is that right? Looks like it sets when we meet, and that's an issue because there was some discussion about having the committee meetings on the off Tuesday. We talked about meeting regular. You know, we've got holidays coming up. We need to talk about committees, when, how to form them. So there's a lot that we need to do quickly. But, you know, I think we just need to discuss it and see how we want to go with this. So do you want to try to tackle the rules today, or do you want to think about them some more? What's the pleasure?
Do we need to have a attorney here when we're just doing the rules or not?
Well, that's actually the fifth thing, and maybe should be the third thing, is to discuss legal counsel. And I'm not adverse to pulling that up and talking about that first, if you like.
Sure.
Being a lawyer, I always like to talk about lawyer stuff, so we can certainly do that. Well, let's just pull that up, it's all right then. You know, in these days and times, we want to make sure we're within the law. We are, as you've probably repeatedly heard, you probably heard it in your sleep when the last meeting, we were unique, so we're on uncharted territory, I guess. We can contract with a lawyer, we can appoint a lawyer. I certainly think that would be more of a contractual thing. I don't think we need a full-time lawyer, and I wouldn't recommend that. I think that would be an expense that might be more than we need to bear. There might be a conflict with the county. I actually, Dr. Green's here, I asked about, well, can we just use our county attorney? And there may be conflicts at times, so I don't know that's going to be an answer for us.
So, just a question, is it possible to use like Mr. Cruz, or is that a conflict also?
Yeah, I think it would be.
I think it is a conflict because they represent the county.
We don't anticipate any conflicts, but if push came to shove on something, you would have two different governing bodies.
Well, if we were to proceed in the course of action and a few years later it deemed not appropriate, I guess we have the same counsel, it could be problematic.
So is it, of course, we interviewed a lot of good people when we were looking for a contract, and, Westall was one we were talking to.
I was just going to see if we could entertain, to the general consensus of Jack Westall as her background, and we hired a county attorney. We had a number of really good applicants, and then pretty much it came down to Bob Deutsch and Jack Westall. And so I would be very comfortable with Jack Westall if he would do it.
Okay. We could direct Mr. Sherry to contact him and see if he was interested. What's the pleasure of the board? What the rest of, I mean, we have advantage of seeing these people. Of course, you don't, and I'm good to put it out if you want for RFP or something. Either way is fine. Mr. Westall is certainly a very capable lawyer. There were other good lawyers in there. Mr. Westall would be fine with me, but if we want to do more. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe I'm naive, but I can't imagine that we would have need for legal counsel a whole lot.
No.
So I agree with you that this is a contract situation. I have a lot of confidence in the commissioners in their interview process with all of the different council. And if you all hired Mr. Deutsch and Mr. Westall as the other finalist, I know Jack personally, and think very highly of him, so I would be very comfortable with everybody else's approval with proceeding to contact him, see if he's interested. I don't know if the board would like to interview him or talk to him in advance, but I feel very comfortable.
He's a really fine fellow.
Yeah, he withdrew it. He withdrew.
He did.
From.
He did a Matt Kern.
He did.
He did Matt Kern.
He pulled a Matt Kern.
I didn't want any friction at the beginning of the meeting here. So between
So
George-
he did a Matt Kern, that's what I'm going to call it from now on.
We're gonna arm wrestle.
That's right.
This is trying to lose. It seems to me it's a very efficient way to do it. If you can handle it that way, you've already done the process. I think it's a good idea.
No? Matt?
Yeah, tell me.
Good. I just hate that we didn't, you didn't get to, I mean, it sounds like
I know.
Karen knows him, but if y'all don't know him, if you wanted to come in, we could certainly ask him, but I'd be comfortable just going ahead and asking if y'all are.
Yeah, that's fine. with me.
Do you need a motion to do that?
Okay, yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we retain the services of Zach Westall as the attorney for the CRA on a contractual basis.
Okay, there's a motion by Commissioner Frost, a second by Ms. Johnson. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. And we will, are you good to, of course, this after the vote, I guess we'll get the details and the specifics from Mr. Sherry at our next meeting about the terms.
Dr. Green, how would we decide the terms?
On the county attorney,
For the CRA attorney, as far as payment?
I look at how often you meet, and I would plan on basically that many hours plus one more a month that you need their services most likely.
Can you give us a recommendation of what number that would be?
5 to 7 hours a month.
Okay.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Is, maybe this is a question for Ed or for Dr. Green. Who is handling the budget right now?
We are, at this point, still a county department, and so the responsibility is within Buncombe County Finance. Scarlett Clark is the CRA budget, or she is the finance person for the CRA now, and Steve Garrison, who is sitting to her right, who we working with. But right now, our finances are being run as a Buncombe County department. So we're not financially autonomous at this point.
With the 3.5 cent that the commissioners passed in the summer is our department money, right?
Yes. That's how it's being, even though it's together, they have it separated to see how, I guess this is all I was doing first year.
And it was my understanding until all the tax bills are paid, the CRA is borrowing money to maintain its budget until such time all the money is in. Is that right?
My understanding is that since we are a county department, that would be substantially correct, that the county is paying for the CRA's expenses now. When tax collections come in January, the county will be able to reimburse itself for the expenses they've spent. So,
Right.
because that tax is separate.
So would the CRA then still be a county department? Or does the CRA stand on its own?
You'll be a county department through the balance of this fiscal year, so through June
That's right.
30th,
Yeah.
you're a county department. And after that is yet to be decided.
So we have till June 30th to get our act together.
Yeah, I think that would be a good way to put it, that we have, until we get through January and those tax collections come in, then you'll actually know what the financial picture is going to be.
I'm confused by that. So I thought come July 1st, then the authority I didn't know that we were waiting on something. What would we be waiting on?
Okay, it's my understanding that we're contracting the employees so that they're part of the county.
All right.
They're employed by the county,
Yes, sir.
so that they're not worried about,
Right.
you know, okay, well, oh my gosh, we're going to be employed by this other authority. They're employed by the county, they have county jobs, they have county benefits. That's not changing,
Right.
right?
Okay, Ed, well, maybe, you know, I'm not real sure we need to get into this, but if it's a question of the board, it's fair enough. Why don't we just kind of, the current situation as y'all understand it? And maybe Dr. Green can come over and tell us through, you know, how you see it as county manager. I think the intent was to keep it pretty much the status quo, and particularly the county benefits and salaries and everything,
Right.
so.
I was just puzzled by the June 30th, we'll decide what we're doing.
Okay, so tell us how we're set up right now as far as the county is concerned.
Actually, the way we're set up right now, it really is run as a county department, and it's scheduled to do that through the end of June. CRA will contract, based on what the commissioner said, will contract with the county to keep these employees as county employees, and they will pay the expenses for those employees with the CRA tax. And we'll also have all the support services, whether it's IT or facilities or finance, HR, all of those are support services that we'll provide on a reimbursement basis. That's pretty much the way it is working today and would be working going forward until you make a decision to do it a different way.
Okay, I understand. Okay, that clarifies. Okay.
Is that, okay, is everybody?
But is it going to be a separate authority, or is it going to stay part of the county?
As a government, you're already you're a
Okay,
separate
thank
government
you.
already. And
Okay.
how you acquire your
Okay,
services is through contracts.
okay.
Okay, here's where I look at it. The General Assembly set this up July 16th. We didn't appoint until October. We didn't meet until October, so something had to give between July and October. The feeling was that we needed to, well, we technically did appoint the commissioners to get it started, but we knew that was a temporary, all 7 commissioners were the first members of this board. We just figured we had to get things moving, had to start thinking about how to proceed. And so I think the intent was to keep things the way they were as we became a team and learned how to work together and what we wanted to do under the guidelines of what the General Assembly has mandated us to do. So I think that's kind of how we got to that. And as we figure out, I think George said it good just a conversation a few minutes ago, we got to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to do this stuff. And then I think the rest of it will fall into place, committees, structure, everything else. But I would suggest we really focus very much in a laser focus about what is it we want to do. And then again, I think the structure will become more apparent because all of you have worked on boards and all of you have pretty good ideas of the best way to get there. So that's my read.
For everybody's confidence, we do account for everything related to this in a separate fund, which is like having 2 different companies.
Right,
So
right.
we're able to answer those questions anytime.
All right, any other discussion on our setup right now? All right, then I would suggest we do take up the operating and try to follow the, well, let me ask this. Like I do with, I think part of the operating thing, does anyone wish to have anything brought up before we go to the operating procedures and rules? Okay, if not, we'll just follow the agenda the rest of the time. Okay, operating rules. Did everybody get a chance to really spicy reading? Is there any discussion of what was proposed? I think the one thing that we had some question marks by the regular meeting dates. I'd suggest maybe we talk about that. And this may go toward another part only about committees, but you know, you've got holidays coming up. You know, certainly, I don't think anyone wants to meet on a holiday, so that's clear. We have people, I made a call. I'm sorry I didn't talk to anybody. I just made a call based on what I thought. We have requests for people to come and want to talk to us about funding. And my view was that until we really know where we're going to go, we don't need to be talking to folks about funding. We don't have a procedure to do it. I mean, we say it's what it was before, and we do need to wrestle with that in the near future, but I just thought it was premature to do that. And so Ed wrote me and I just said, no, I think we can do that later. And I hope that was all right with the board. I think we need to have a focus first.
Sounds
So,
like you want your response to those sorts of things, David, to be process driven. That you're not just having ad hoc people coming to us saying, hey, come talk to you. I think if you start down that road, it's a precedent you'll take a long time getting out of.
yeah.
If you did exactly the right thing.
And I think they, they just don't know. You know, here's a new board and they don't know. You know, a lot of them don't know any different. They're just going to come over. We've got to come and ask for it.
All of you have been on boards where there weren't a lot of kind of loosey-goosey rules, and I do think that it is hard, and you have more work as opposed to when you have rules and everybody knows what they are and they have to follow them, and there's a timing and things have to be done. The only timing thing is in the next one, which is the capital request, and you know that we'd have to decide that today. And so on that one, just looking ahead, I think that perhaps we need to just keep things the way they are for this year as we get started and look at things, you know, as we get set up, review that. Because is that right that there is a November 22 deadline for getting capital projects in?
I don't have a budget calendar in front of me, but that's normally the timeframe.
And that's capital projects.
Yeah.
So, question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just because I would like to defer all these things that I'm being asked and have the right information. So is there a capital and an operational deadline? Are there that are different? And if so, what are those dates? And if somebody calls and says, what do we do? Where do we direct them? And is there a page on the county's website for the CRA that has those forms?
It's my understanding that Ed, being the executive director for the meantime, that he's the staff person that we are to direct those things to. Is that not?
I think that's what we discussed last time.
The first question of the capital budget always goes in first, so this is a typical deadline for us. And the question we need to consider today is whether to juggle last year's request. And the operating budget typically is done in pieces. The personnel piece comes first, then the rest of it, and typically we'll see that in January and February. So that's where you'll have, frankly, you'll have more data in January because you'll have tax collection figures that will inform you better than the information we have right now. So the only piece before us right now is whether to make a recommendation to the county to change the order of the capital projects, particularly the ones that we kick in the next year. The list that was in your notebook is actually last year's list.
And what tab is that one?
So I printed out, actually, it was in this sheet.
We've got a copy.
Yeah, I gave you an extra copy of that today.
Okay.
It's also in your notebook. So what the county budget office did was pull out of the overall Buncombe County capital plan the CRA project. So we're the ones that are in blue. So again, this reflects the process from last year and the ranking from before. Particularly looking at the coming year, we want to look at the projects that are showing 14 and 15 these dates, because in effect those will be next up. unless the priorities have changed.
Well, I think, speaking as a new commissioner, the capital plan was something that kind of blew the top of my head off. When I first saw it. And I'm in the first orientation meeting, I'm like, you see that, and you see all these zeros, and you're, what? And so, and I see that it was described to me as kind of a wish list, and it's not necessarily a wish list. But priorities have been, you look at it and you may or may not have the same priorities, I don't know, but and there may be more things that should go on here,
Well, Fran and I do have a recommendation, at least in the first stage, that we would like to make when you're ready for it.
Well, we're kind of bound, in some ways, we're bouncing between 3 and 4, but I'm comfortable with the flow, because I think the procedure kind of flows into what recommendations we make. So if you're comfortable, I know I'm cognizant of we've got, in some ways, 2 different things, but really not, because the first year we're going to have to weigh in on these things. And so I'm good to continue going down this road. And I've asked what the recommendation would be then.
I think on the, and I will ask Fran to go first with this, because we actually agree that we have a priority that is higher than any of the others. And it will always.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'm trying to figure out where the big picture lies here. We've got X amount of dollars in this budget, and there's going to be a contract for the employees, the personnel number of the budget, which is going to be X number of dollars. There's going to be X number of dollars overall that's coming out of the tax receipts, and then there are going to be projects like these capital projects. The difficulty I'm having is putting any kind of request into a broader context right now. So if we approve a capital project that's using round numbers, let's say the overall tax receipts are $10 million, and we've got $8 million in personnel requirements, and then we approve today a $3 million capital project. How do we know that we're within the boundaries of available funds?
Well, you're not approving the capital project at this point. You're approving the order that, and I'll use the term, if you'll take me with a serious use of the word wish list. This is an expression of our priorities. You're nowhere near actually approving anything that would involve spending money. And that is part of the process that has to be developed between this board and the Board of Commissioners as to how that's going to work. Because you'll notice on the right side, there's the debt payment attached to this. So how that is going to be handled is something that is yet to be worked out. So essentially, we're making that first stab at setting a priority and whether we see a clear difference in the priorities between the old process from last year and what you're seeing. And what Fran and I were going to recommend essentially is let's don't go very far down this list right now. We've got 2 or 3 projects that are in effect have something imminent about them. But beyond that, you're really in the realm of the wish list more than anything else. So you would not be approving any expenditure, and the process by which you would approve an expenditure is not something I know yet.
But going back to George's question, would that capital debt, or that debt payment on capital expenditures have to come out of the existing CRA budget, or is there another mechanism that would cover financing of capital expenditures?
Okay, I think the broader, I hear where you're going, I think the broader question is, as a functioning county department, how are these paid for? We have a budget, just like the county departments have a budget. How are these paid for? Do we go in the county bond model? Do we have our own bond? We don't have our own bond model, although we can do that, I think, at some point.
You have to issue any debt through the county for the CRA.
So I think the best way to explain to me, there's like a mortgage. Buncombe County has a mortgage. Right now, we're what, $65,000 out of $200,000 home? That's our mortgage. This was kind of figured in the mortgage, and then the General Assembly said, oh, you can pull this out and have a separate entity. So, you know, when we figured the amount, Wanda, were these things included? I mean, and how should they look at, they're asking the good questions about the budget. How can we pass part of the budget not knowing what the big budget is? Now, that's what it boils down to. But I think there were some assumptions made when the 3.5 cent was talked, when we talked to the General Assembly about that, so maybe there should be some discussion about that.
3.5 cents does include any current debt service that you have, whether it's a library or a park or whatever. The 3.5 cents includes current debt. It does not include any future debt.
And this would be future debt on this sheet here. So this would be something new that is not currently in the budget. But as Ed says, this is not passing. Tell us your thinking about what's the next step after if we voted here, what goes on next.
Well, this would, if we vote here and we change anything on the list in terms of its order, that goes in effect for the CRA, I think, on hold. We've expressed our priorities. Whether we will be able to take on any additional debt is a question that will be decided after the new year. Because seriously, you have to know what the tax collections are before you can really project out the budget. Some of the existing debt will pay down, but I don't know what the schedule is for that. So all that information has to be put together. So essentially now, you're not voting to spend anything. You're voting that among these priorities that have been put on the list in the past, do you want to change the order? Because any time that the CRA was going to ask the county to take on debt, which is because it would be county debt, we would have to satisfy Wanda and her staff that the income was behind that. That we actually could pay it and pay our other expenses. And we're not there yet. The personnel piece, as we get into that and working on that part of the budget after the first of the year, will very much be driven by what we have now. And you can start to make your way through the details and how that budget's broken down. We're still running a library budget, a recreation budget, and then we have what we call the administration budget, which is the authority budget. So all of that, we're still learning the ins and outs of that. So everything we'll bring to you in the future is going to be based on what do we think 3.5 cents is going to pay for.
So last year, you're spending 3.3 cents, right?
Yes, sir.
3.3 cents of the 3.5 is allocated to operational and debt service, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's basically what you've got. Now, you've got a list that's been prioritized by the departments. I assume that's how this is done.
That's how
it's
that
not
was.
necessarily, wish list is not, but these are things that you believe that, should be on the list as a capital project. And so as debt is paid off, then debt decisions are made on what can go on. And right now we have up to 3.5 cents to be able to do whatever's on this list.
Yeah, which is very little. Yeah, it's like,
Unless we pay some off.
So this
yeah,
is,
unless we pay some off.
sorry, Scott. So this is a staff-driven list.
At this point, it's last year's list. So yes, that is a staff-driven list. The library recommendations came through the library staff and the library board. And on the recreation side, Fran will have to address that.
So just so I think the question would be, if we say we looked at the first three things in 2014, we would be suggesting to commit to those projects and asking that we fit under the mortgage for the debt payment service, but the whole projects get going, correct?
You would be making that request of the commissioners to look at that, but I think you need to know the status of what's being requested, because some of them come with more urgency than others.
Okay.
could we vote or agree to support our interest in those things and perhaps have a more in-depth presentation, or ask Fran and Ed to tell us about that urgency that Wanda is talking about?
Yeah, it's very appropriate. What are the, okay,
What's your right?
what are the deadlines here? I mean, we know we've got one, and is this an artificial, is November 22 an artificial deadline? That's when the departments really need to have it in, but kind of sort of you could get it in later? Or is this kind of like, we need to know what it is so we can start crunching numbers with the county and look at this mortgage we've had?
It's not an artificial date. We have to have everything in so we can start compiling these things. But I think really, while you do need to look at your numbers and what you can afford, you also need to look at your responsibility for the status of the assets that you are caring for. And I would just say the Zordner pool is a big, big deal. And so you gotta look at what's driving the need, and then let us work our, when you actually submit your budget based on need more than want, then we can work our way back to what you're gonna have revenue to cover. Does that make any sense?
Not to me. I'm sorry.
Okay, you have X number of people that you're paying for, you have X number of operating expenses, that's pretty consistent from year to year. You are currently paying some debt service for some projects, and you have a responsibility for some assets that need to have good routine maintenance, and some of them have reached a point where their lifespan is over. Zordner Pool has reached that point, and I think everybody can answer that much better than me. So, does that need to be your number one priority? And if it's your number one priority, then we've got to get estimates on what it costs. We have to figure how much of your budget that would take, and then how you can, whether or not you can afford to pay for that.
Okay,
Within your current tax rate.
okay. You're asking the right questions. I don't know if you're comfortable or anybody's comfortable, because we don't know what the big budget is.
But it seems like right now, from a process point of view, if we miss this point in time with at least a recommendation on priorities, we're essentially saying those projects are not going to be up for consideration this year, right? Am I hearing that right?
That's the way I
So
would.
the urgency right now is that, it seems to me like as a board, we're looking at sort of two different dimensions here. We're looking at in-our-face urgency on the one hand, because of either process or condition of assets or whatever it is. And then we're also looking at long-term planning and positioning issues about how we as a board are going to work and what we're trying to get accomplished long term. So it's almost like we've got to work by focals in a way as a board for a time until we get all that kind of clear.
Could I just, so if we could, to me, the first part of what you said, if we could hear the staff's recommendation of the most urgent needs, and then by proclamation, to say that, yes, we agree and we follow the staff's recommendation. We're not committing to getting us hammer and nails tomorrow, but we're just, so then we can set that part aside.
We're prioritizing.
Yeah, and then go on to the second part. But if we take care of the first part first, then we have, and I think it's important to follow the staff's recommendation of what they think are urgent needs.
Well, and I think the other piece are the other deadlines we have. This board will have to do a budget. And when does that budget due?
February 1.
It is on February, yes.
Okay, so Ed said there's pieces of it. There's the capital projects piece, there's the personnel piece, and then there's the overall budget that includes all the pieces.
You don't start from scratch with a blank piece of paper. We would really provide you information, historical information, and what it costs to carry each employee, and so you're not having to start from scratch. That data will come to you.
Okay, so is everybody good with Ellen's suggestion that we hear the priorities and discuss it a little further? We do have another Tuesday before Thanksgiving, before the 22nd also. And so I'm kind of thinking, I did say this is the last meeting before, but I'm almost thinking these are bigger needs than committees right now. I think we all need to understand this, because I know how it works with the county, but it's a little bit different because unlike the county, we set the tax rate after we got all the needs. We kind of don't have that. We have the tax rate, now we have a ceiling right now, which frankly the county doesn't have. Until we set the tax rate, we can set it up or down. So, you know, it is a different process, even for the three commissioners here. So we have a ceiling that we've got to work under. So if it's all right with you, I'd recognize our staff and tell us, Ed and Fran, about what you see the priorities are, and then let's have a discussion about that before we go further.
The sole municipal operated pool in Buncombe County sits on the campus of T.C. Robertson High School. It was once owned by the Oak Forest Community Group and was transferred or given to the county many years ago. It's a 50-year-old indoor swimming pool. It has significant structural, mechanical, accessibility issues that are have been held together by incredible strength of physical facilities general services staff, a committed staff of our aquatics director, and that pool is 6 lanes and is not going to be with us much longer. That's the best way I can say. I think that they have done a phenomenal job, but I think its usefulness is near the end. We basically right now pretty much close it in the summers to focus on the 5 outdoor pools that we have. We have 4 high schools, three county high school swim teams that are participating there, 1 middle school swim team that practices there, the YMCA, who is out of pool space up the road for their swim team, who uses that pool. It's used for several other classes, but mainly through the main part of the school year up and through till about February. It's swim team time. It is the pool that would not meet current specifications for competition. It is, I'm really looking forward to y'all having a chance to see this facility. I really am. I don't want, I don't usually go to the really, this is awful, ring the bell side, but I continue to ring the bell for this facility. I think that we need a replacement for that pool. I think upgrading it or even making steps towards it would cost over $500,000 to even start to look towards repairs. We have large swim teams in this community that right now, if that pool does not operate, will, I guess, not swim or try to figure something else out. We do have high schools in other parts of the county that swim out of county for swim team practices. So we've got one priority, and I apologize for being redundant. I just have to keep saying this to me is the #1 priority, and I did have an opportunity to, in the 3 months or 4 months that Ed and I have had the opportunity to be a joint department, is one of the first places I took staff to say, I really would like you to understand where we are with this facility. There's been conversations, task force, study groups, a nonprofit aquatic center group. There have been people look at it. There have been a number of studies that have been done to say this is where we are, but this is what we would need to happen. We've looked at what it would take to even enclose some of our outdoor pools to say what are our options if we have to do something quickly. We've done some of that. What we've not done from a staff perspective yet is to look at what we would need to do immediately if that was the #1 priority. That, to me, is part of what this list does. It helps staff focus on what the next priority is. We have master plans for greenways and the other ones that I filled notebooks for paper with last time. and we have a sports park master plan, we have a Lake Julian master plan. And right now, conversations and getting our community back together around the issue of indoor swimming to me and recreational water safety and any of other wonderful physical and fitness and wellness possibilities is really what we need to be looking at. That would be my number one priority. And that was like a 5-minute speech, right? Sorry.
That was awesome. So how many things am I looking at? I see pool showing up a couple times here, so just to not look like an idiot, help me understand
I have the same
the
question.
specific, exactly the dollars on here that we're talking about.
You're just talking about the land acquisition and design at this point, right?
Land acquisition and design for a replacement pool. Now, I know that we've had conversations about bigger and bigger facilities, bigger than just a single swimming pool, which I guess is where you jump down, I think it's 2016 now, which talks about an aquatic facility. That to me is a totally different issue than what we're dealing with, or another issue to deal with.
So they're not related.
Not necessarily, right?
This project really services your schools and your local constituencies. And the other project really is an economic development.
Right,
Bring
it's a
in,
different, it's a
yeah.
different target group, if you will.
Is there any economic development in this pool discussion though? Because did I hear you say there were? Did I hear tournaments, or am I losing my mind?
No, I think you and I have had discussions. I'll just share something. This is kind of jumping toward the second part of this, and it is a two-level discussion. One of the Chamber of Commerce visits we took was to Boise, Idaho. It's kind of out there. It's a pretty place. It's out there, though. They have the NCAA national champion swim teams there because Boise built a lot bigger than they needed to. But they, in the middle of winter, they have people from all the country come to have NCAA championships. So my takeaway when we came back was, let's talk to the schools around here and see if there is a possibility of working with them. I was at Beach Mountain this weekend. They had the national championship bike things because Lee's McRae and Beach Mountain got together and they did the national championships up there. So I just, I'd like us to kind of get all the information before we make decisions. But that's a different facility. This is recreation.
It is, and it's also an opportunity to look at also what we're doing for younger children as far as swim and their ability to have time in the water, and other groups, either lap swimmers or master swimmers or other possibilities that we are not able to accommodate right now.
But it's not either or. This is the field, as you were saying.
Is this phase one of the other one? Are you looking for new land, new location?
To me, I see it as a replacement for Zoidner, for the Zoidner pool.
Why is there a land acquisition if you've already got Zoidner in place? What is it?
I don't know that site that it's on right now, you can build on. I haven't had those studies done.
So it's on the school grounds, is that right?
Yes.
So you have to acquire the county has to acquire the land from the school? Is that what you're saying?
We just need to look at what it would take to put a pool on that site. Right now, we have we have a pool on one level and then a 2-story recreation center, which was actually the original building, sitting next door to it.
So is there, 2 questions, and I had that question also. Is there a step here between prioritizing this as something that needs attention and really saying we recommend this $3 million for phase 1? Because it sounds to me like, which is different debt service, but it sounds to me like we don't really know this money, we want to spend some amount of money up to do the assessment, evaluation, planning, if there is a purchase or a fee, to your point. So what we're doing is prioritizing here. And then when this budget is approved, move forward with this assessment. Is that how we're all
Yeah,
reading this?
that was we weren't committing to doing it, we were just having some sort of priority list.
I think it's a great conversation and a great way to do it, because when I look at that list, I don't know how the list was, how y'all come up with it, and then to hear, you present that need as a great need, then we got 3.3 cents, pretty much if it costs 3.3 cents to run this stuff last year, it's gonna cost that much to run it this year. Might be a little bit more, a little bit less. You might shave some up, but, all about efficiency, but it'll be about the same. So you got 0.2 cents, which is that $500,000 a year? Okay, so you got $500,000, and $3 million is 200,000. So you got, if this group wanted to say, hey, we're going, by gosh, we're going to fix that pool, then it's you got about $5 million probably available, and still have still be at about 3.4-ish, not be spending all the money. So to hear passionately what you think the needs are, and then for us to look at that, and that's kind of an oversimplification of where we're at, but I think it's pretty close to what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And kind of gives you something to get behind too, I guess, in a way. I'm sorry.
Well, we're entering this game, it's probably a little bit after halftime.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and so we didn't have a lot. I mean, I guess the three of us had a little bit, but, the way the county's set up, the departments really kind of come and just tell us this is what we need, and there's not as much, we don't micromanage the whole thing,
Right.
so. But yes, go ahead, Karen.
Well, I just was trying to understand, two thoughts. For Fran, if I hear what you're saying correctly, and I'm all behind your passionate support, I live down the street from you, that's my neighborhood. And I have, yes, been in that pool, so I know what we're talking about. If I understand you, it could cost less than what you have on here if we didn't have to buy land. So we would be ultimately recommending an amount up to that's capped roughly. Is that?
And not having done that background here, and I don't know how to put a dollar fee on some, or a dollar sign on that.
Exactly.
So-
But we've got to have some cost analysis done. The other question that I have is, in the current fiscal year's budget, would there be any money available in a marginal way to help advance this study that she needs to start, so that part of that money could come out of this fiscal year?
Advanced planning allocation.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost like to see that as part of our due diligence to conscientiously recommend this.
Dr. Green?
We probably would have to do what you're talking about, and I don't know that you can put a capital project in the middle of the budget.
Actually, just so you know the rule of thumb in the county.
It is a crisis.
If it's a quarter to $500,000, we look for a way to pay cash for it. If it tops that, we always look to finance it, so you really are looking at your expense being the new debt service cost. We have really good folks on staff that can do a good estimate of what it's going to cost, and we use those resources. But a project could come in at $2.5 million, and it may come in at $4 million, but you just got to put your best estimate on it when you're requesting it to start forward. But I don't know the details of what's available in this year's budget. I'm not watching your budget that closely to see if you had some study money. And I don't know other than getting a contractor in to take a look at what you're going to build, that's the big estimate you need.
I think what we're trying to do here is, going back to what Fran said a little while ago, we're directing the staff as to what to throw their energy into. So if you agree with our recommendation that this is priority number one, that means it's going to get our first attention. There's obviously, we have to now, if you accept that, go back and come back to you with a concept.
And more money, information.
And more money information for sure. But right now, I am looking for the direction from the board of where to focus staff energy. We're recommending to you it go here.
Is this the whole recommendation, or would we just heard the recreation side?
You've just heard the recreation side, but I want to say I agree that this is the number one priority. So if we only do one thing in the next year, I would say this is what we should do. I agree with you.
And I would go one step further. there are a lot of years we don't get to the capital projects. We just don't do them. It's like, this is what we'd like to do. And I appreciate the numbers, but I don't know that we're necessarily, I think you want to know, is it going to be 10,000 or 10 million? I mean, that's probably matters, but, you know, again, I'm not sure, we're not binding these figures. You just want to give us a relative idea. Initial, first blush, this is what it might be, but we're going to give, it's a little bit more than a wish list. It's more like, check this out and see what, come back to us list. And so that's probably a better way to look at it than saying, well, let's just throw it and see where the stars land. It's not quite, a little bit more than that.
Fran has made arrangements for the December meeting, which we were assuming would be the next meeting. We're going to meet down there.
Oh, good,
So
great.
you actually will see it.
There's another meeting before that.
Well, there is, and that's another, that goes back to procedural, do we want, and in my recommendation, I just think this is a really good, we're gonna have a lot of tough, we're gonna have to get down to the weeds, because there's no, we've got to set this up, and everybody's got to have a comfort level with this. So I'm gonna suggest right now, we are the committee. Let's not worry much about committees as we are about money and how we're gonna work together. I think committees will come. But I think right now, this is more important for everybody here. And so I would suggest perhaps our next meeting being in 2 weeks and go back on this. But I think there are, and it's before the 22nd, but I would, it'd be the pleasure of the board whether we want to continue this or try to work this out more today. But you've got great questions. It is a process thing, and it's a little bit different the way we did it when it was a department, because we have a cap. And so we can't just say we want to do all of these, and they're all first priority.
I would suggest that the county has a cap too, when we put our budget together. I usually get instructions pretty early on whether or not we can look at tax rate increase.
That's right.
I can't say I've ever had that instruction either.
Yeah.
Look for an increase.
You hadn't got that phone call, have you?
Can I,
Okay, Karen, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Fran, if I'm hearing you correctly, this pool is your first priority and it's more important than these other things that are listed on here in the recreation area as 2014.
We have so many wants and so many needs that the community has, but as far as urgency goes, this is the most urgent project that's before us.
Gotcha. Thank
So
you.
would it be appropriate at this point, newly elected chairman for the second time, to make a motion that we follow the status guideline for this capital fund?
I would ask that you defer, that's an appropriate motion. Would the board be comfortable to defer until we heard Ed also? Yeah. You'll hold that.
Well, Ed is perfectly comfortable with that motion because of this. The library's highest priority for the last few years, since we finished the renovation of the PAC library downtown, has been to either replace or remodel the East Branch Library on Tunnel Road. It's a 1965 building. It's actually owned by the city of Asheville, but it's a gem, meaning it's probably the single best physical location we have for a branch library. So you have a 2,400 square foot, almost 50-year-old building that's the fourth busiest branch we have. The staff consensus on this has been moving that branch could do more harm than good. So we're committed to trying to work with the city of Asheville to figure out how to renovate and do a small addition on that existing site. The cost estimates we've given you here are really based on having to do a fairly extensive amount of reconstruction. It could be less than what's showing here, it could be more. But part of my reason to be in agreement with Fran is the staff work that will have to go on between city and county to come up with the final plan and cost estimates is probably going to consume a good part of next year. East right now has all kinds of problems, many fully as severe as what Fran described, but when it comes right down to it, at Zoidner, we have an indoor pool that leaks and has mechanical systems that may or may not be fixable when they go back. We could have a sudden cessation of service to the public if that pool goes down. And the same situation is just not there on the library side. So I'm perfectly comfortable.
So, you know, just as far as like square footage of the libraries, kind of looking at that, is You're 2,700, and you're 140,000 circulation. Okay, and then the south library's like, it's like
It's 8,000 square.
700, and it's 170,000, running through there. So obviously, are you just terribly overcrowded? Because it's more than half the size and probably 80% of the circulation in the south.
Yes, the big issue at East is it's overcrowded, and it primarily is expressed in there's no place to sit, and you actually have to go outside the building to go to the restrooms. And that is a rather bizarre set of circumstances for one of the busiest
I hate to
libraries.
get gas, much
Yeah.
less going and trying to be put.
So I think the consensus on that priority in the library side is as absolute as anything ever is. East is the next thing to do, but it's not going to collapse in the next 2 years.
And you think you need coordination with working with the city?
That will take time,
Can I ask a
because
question?
it is their building.
I mean, it's been my understanding that these libraries are the responsibility of the county and the CRA. But you said the city owns this facility, so does the city have any responsibility?
The city, I think, has a responsibility in the sense that they own the physical property, but the city, at the time East was built, we were a city library, so that switching back and forth happened many years later. The city charges us no rent and never has.
Okay.
So we, in effect, exist in that building and have for 30 years as squatters. So essentially, we take care of interior maintenance, major projects, the city either does or we split them. That's worked out case by case. I expect the library part of this renovation would be something that the CRA would pay for.
To me, kind of where I was going on that square footage discussion was, at some point in time, would you agree or disagree that the optimal size of the libraries is going to be less square footage than, say, the South Asheville? Because here it
Yes.
says 8,000,
Yes.
but that's an old capital list, so you're making it, you're providing a need at 2,700, so maybe the new library look model is 4,500 square feet. I don't know.
Yeah,
We're
it's-
thinking,
When is it pertinent for us then to, we all have our own opinions about what's going to happen down the road. And I think the question that I have personally is, are some of these facilities, as we're planning them now, or as they were planning maybe 2 or 3 years ago, put on this list, 10 years from now, are they still going to be feasible or viable? Our libraries 10 years from now are going to be what they are now. And I think it's a good question, because with technology, I was reading the other day about libraries and how they're currently being used, and you're not going to have DVD for rent anymore, it's all live streaming. And there's things that you don't need as much space as you used to have, which goes to Jeff's point. So obviously, we're not trying to micromanage here, but I am curious then, if we approve something here to put on the priority list, who gets the plan and what goes there?
well, the actual planning of the facility would be done by the architect and the library staff. So that would not be something I'd see the board involved in a detailed way. In terms of storage, meaning the book stacks that you see row after row, yes, I think you can reasonably expect to pull that down in the amount of square footage it would take up. Essentially on the program side, branch library is a community center, and we do meeting room space, we do story times, children's programs, and the base circulation, meaning what actually is checked out by our citizens, is still it's not falling. So I think what you'll see is a gradual decrease in the need to store print, and probably an increase in program space and also in computers.
But the circulation is not going down.
Now, circulation in the branch libraries is not going down. But that's not, I do think you'll see a very gradual decline over time. But there's not anything really dramatic happening
But
there.
there's no question in the library tomorrow is not the library today. And we
I
don't know what
was-
it looks like or the size, but it's evolving.
It is evolving, and I think what we're looking at on the east side is pretty exciting, because probably the most square footage we're gonna be able to get out of that site is gonna be somewhere in the 5,000 to 6,000 square foot range, so it won't be 8,000 square feet. We're gonna share the community center space with the city. So the actual footprint of that would probably be closer to about 5,000 square feet. And it won't have any more book staff, very likely, than it has now.
And one thing I'd like to contemplate for us is, we have an NC study where it's proposed, or it's touted as the most advanced library in the world. It's not a library, and we have, I guess, some adjoining communities, we probably have some really advanced libraries that have been built recently. It'd be nice for us to be led by the staff, and at least maybe some education about that. What is the trend out there, and kind of what is the vision we might collectively develop around sort of best practice in these ways? Because I'm not up to speed with that at all, and I'd love to have some more education about it. Because I think these things that y'all are raising are really interesting, and others that really grapple with them and have really built to them. And it would help us probably collectively just to have some common experience with it. And Raleigh's 5-hour trip, and one of our sports stuff.
I like to hear from Eleanor.
I'm sorry,
I like to hear from Eleanor. She looks like the head of the swallow and the canary sitting down there.
Well, what Ed is saying is what I would have said, that the material space will decline somewhat. At the same time, if you're adding more computers, you're actually not giving up floor space, you're taking floor space. So you have to have room for patrons, and you have to have room for staff. And the staff in that building, as I understand it, has almost no workspace. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I'm curious if the library of the future would have a computer as we know it. I think, I can do everything on my little device here that has the large screen, and I believe that tablets and things you can move around. Somebody checks out a tablet, they go sit in the corner, and you're not taking up extra space. So I think with Wi-Fi, so I just don't, I guess I don't know. I'm throwing this out because I thought about it. So, I hope that I can have this discussion at a further time about what is the future and what are we paying for.
I think, going along with what Ed and Jordan Eleanor said, one of the reasons I wanted to be on here, this board, was so that everybody could share the library experience, and from the poorest to the poor, and so to come up with the best practices. And I can't imagine not having computers, because there's going to be a lot of people that want to come to the library that don't have money for tablets. So I kind of agree with what everybody's saying as far as not making any rash decisions to make libraries smaller.
Well, let me suggest we do this. I think, I would like, if our next meeting is going to be exorbitant for the pool, we'll get, that might be on the agenda. Let's talk about pools, what we need, what the possibilities are, the two levels, if we ever want to partner with somebody, which I think there's some ample possibilities that we just want to flush out, maybe they won't pan out. And then the next meeting, maybe go to the library and have this continue this.
That's the way to do it.
Because then you're there, you see it, you say, okay, this is what 8,000 square feet, okay. And let them pick the location for the third meeting, or the fourth meeting, and them have the discussion on this. Because I think right now, we want to always have a lot of good discussion, but I think we do have a deadline. We've got another meeting in between. We could defer our discussion of the capital projects, but we've heard that pretty clearly two things that are both pretty big ticket items. We don't know that the cost will just be the debt service, because that's the best guess they have today, I think. Is that fair to say? I mean, Guess might be a little bit, the best estimate. It's not really a guess. If we did it today, that's probably what it cost, right? We started today, that's probably how it would fit into the mortgage thing I'm talking about. So, are you okay with that? Because I think that can almost be a 2-hour meeting.
Yes.
And I'm kind of saying, let's do that while we're there. I don't want to put it off, but I want to make sure there are some deadlines here, so. Are y'all comfortable with that proposal?
Ellen made a motion, does that mean you just withdraw?
No, I asked her to defer it, and if it's appropriate, I'm good to bring it back up, and if you're good to make it, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I think it's good to make that motion, and especially with Ed liking the motion as well.
Can you say it again before you actually make it?
The motion was to approve the staff's request for the capital plan appropriate, or their priority capital plan, which is replacing the pool.
Okay, so we would, the priority to the capital plan.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's not the entire capital plan, we're not talking about that, we're talking about the pool.
Well, I would suggest, I always think it's a good, and I think our custom has been to have a couple on there. Is that fair to say? Well, I don't know if we've ever done one which is one project. What's our precedent there? Is that?
Usually, if you know what your projects are, you can request them for future years, not just all for 2015, which you might see a need in 16, 17, or 18, so you request them for those years out.
So can
That's a
I
retreat.
make my motion that for the time being, for right now, follow the staff's recommendation for the capital plan?
But moving
Or
Zugner to first.
moving the pool first.
Okay, because that is a change in this, because
Yeah.
the pool's 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next year is 15.
And we're not, and we're, as part of the discussion, we're not committing to this, we're just, right now.
We're instructing staff to go on this, get this. So you're moving, all right, so the motion would be to move the Zugner to the top and the rest of them as is for this particular financial
For
year.
this
Elder?
year. And you're moving how many, 3 2014 items remain 2014 or move down to 2015?
It's a very valid question. And I think that Eleanor could make that as a friendly amendment to her, because I think what we're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to pull her into this motion. If you do that, then the capital plan changes to where the only thing on 2014, and again, we can change this later, the only thing on 2014 is the pool.
May I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
2014 budget's gonna be 2015.
Right.
Everything gets a one added to it.
Okay, so 2015 becomes, what she said is those that are currently on here at 2014, all these become 2015, but technically 2 of them move down to 2016. Because you have one on 2015, which is what she said. I think that's what Eleanor said. Is that right? Other than forget the
I think I
numbers.
understood what you said. Say it again.
Can we actually clarify and say, if I'm understanding, year one, whatever that year is,
There you go.
we're asking Sawyer to be the only project.
I think that's what she's
That's
saying.
what you're for the amendment.
I was asking for clarification.
And then year two would have the other 3 projects
Correct.
that are now listed as 214
Yeah.
on here. Okay.
So can you amend your motion to say that?
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to follow the staff's recommendation with the amendment of putting the, I can't pronounce the name of it, Zeugner
Sawyer, yeah, is that right?
pool as the priority for 2015. And the others would follow in consecutive years after this.
Second.
Is that what's staff on? As far as the, we're basically taking 3 projects that were at the top of the list and moving them down here and putting them in place.
Good question.
that is what we're recommending, is that Zoidner be priority. I would just simply phrase it as Zoidner's priority one, East then becomes the priority two in the next year behind. So I'll put East at the top of the 16 list, in the way I write it.
So like Julian and the Greenways go below.
That's the way I would express it, yes.
And I will say this just as a process issue. All we're doing is saying, go after it this year. Next year, we're gonna have this discussion and we can move number 10 up to number 1, just like we did today. And then there's actually a second process that we're gonna do when we do our budget. We'll put this in there or not. This will be in our budget, not the county's budget. Okay? We've been charged to do this. Now, we're gonna be going back and forth, but basically, we're gonna make the decision on this and the county's gonna ratify it.
I'm
Yes, ma'am.
trusting that there's probably some financial variables, but if we were to see, for example, that we didn't spend as much money as we had budgeted in this fiscal year, and based on what that budget is for next year, I would like to have the ability to add the East Asheville Library back to this list if that's possible. Now, that may not be, but, and I agree with everybody, the pool is a priority for me, but also that library is a priority. So I'm just saying, is there another time that there would be another discussion once we have some more real numbers that we could add that back?
Yes, in the early spring, when we do our budget, we will know more about what's available, what's lapsed. And next year at this time, we'll be able to say, oh, we got that going, let's start the next one. Or let's move, rearrange it. Every year we get the right to change, rearrange the deck here. But we're telling you to do it. If there is money available, yes, we could start, so we could say in our budget, not only do we want to do Zoidner Pool, we want to start East, we want at least the preliminaries on East Asheville. And he's already said that's going to be a year.
Right.
But that tells staff, okay, start, go after it, come back to us with money. And it is there's a lot of interaction here, as you know, but that's the process.
So we got a first and a second.
First and second, we're doing discussion now. Any other discussion
So
on
we really aren't cutting out any projects. If we had a surplus of 200,000, we could still slip in Lake Julian, for example. You know,
Yes.
You're not cutting off any options.
The protocol is we like to get the capital, the big ticket ones, because they got to run around and get more information.
Right.
Then we're going to do the other pieces of it. And then finally, we'll do our actual budget. That's the order. Yeah.
But you could also make a recommendation for something operationally that, as far as, anything. The money doesn't necessarily have to revolve around capital.
Right. Okay.
And I don't know if we had an earthquake and we lost the Civic Center that we couldn't say, county commissioners, would you please do something about the Civic Center? Even though that might be something.
You had earthquakes in there?
Oh, we do.
Okay. Far-fetched, yes. Okay, all right, there's anything else on the motion? So the motion is to move Zoidner to the top, everything else below it, or actually, Zoidner top, and then the East Asheville second, and the rest of them as they were.
Actually, you move order to the top, the rest of
The rest of them are there. I already got it, that's right, you're right. Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion by Commissioner Frost, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Then we will so direct the staff to get on that.
So will they, France, are y'all gonna bring us back pictures and plans and all kinds of cool stuff like that when we go look at the pool? You think that's
I think
possible?
we'll do that, and we'll talk about what's happened since we last talked about pools, and that there's a new aquatic center in Kingsport, Tennessee. So I think as things have continued to change, what I've been talking about nonstop for the last 10 years, the communities have continued to change. So that also brings more information to the table.
Thank you for your zeal.
And we'll be having the meeting treading water in the pool.
Okay, all right, so we have gone through the the CRA capital project request. Now, I would suggest we go back to the procedures. And part of the procedure is, I just said this, but the board needs to decide this collectively. For our next meeting, do you want to meet at the Zorga Pool in 2 weeks?
We have
Is that what you had in mind? What'd you say, the first one in December?
We had assumed they were going to meet once a month, and we booked it for December.
Yeah, they booked December, that's what, so our next meeting is before that, correct?
Well, let's see. Our next meeting would be the Thanksgiving week?
The 26th.
Okay, does the board want to meet Thanksgiving week? If we have to, generally, we don't,
Our thing with
we don't have to, we set our, and that's part of the procedure. I mean, you know, we can have what's that? 26th, it's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Tell its birthday.
And the next week is the commission meeting.
Right.
And the week before is the commission meeting.
Actually, not. We meet the 1st and 3rd, so I think that's the 5th. I don't think we would be meeting.
I think we go to meet on the 26th.
I'm good with that too.
Okay, is that consensus of the board to meet 26, 2 weeks?
Tuesday, that works for me.
And can you check, see if Zorger is available? If Zorger is not, perhaps he's thankful, but Zorger would be very preferable.
We have dance classes that I've already notified that have to be rescheduled for the 10th, so we might need to look at a library. So we've got classes going on in that facility.
And we can't meet at East Asheville on a Tuesday, because that's their busiest day.
Where is the pool at again? I'm sorry, where's the pool at?
T.C. Robertson near the baseball field.
Okay, yeah, is there not a way to be in one of the rooms at the school?
Or at the library.
Or the South Buncombe Library?
If that room is
South
available.
Buncombe Library.
Let's meet
Take
the
a field
library.
trip over there.
Yeah.
Meet the library, then we'll go over to the pool.
So 2 birds with one stone.
Then we'll have to check on that.
If that's available.
Easy, but we'll just-
Okay, so is that good? We will hold our meeting in 2 weeks then. All right.
What time, David?
We had talked about 4 o'clock. Is that still good with people? 4 o'clock, we'll do our best to keep them to 2 hours for a lot of reasons. Mind can absorb what the buttocks can endure. So I think that's a good way to do it if it's all right with the board. Well, let's talk about the rules here. The big one was the times, the second meeting, we put down second Tuesday. If we want to meet every 2 weeks, it would be the second and fourth Tuesdays. Commission meets the 1st and 3rd. Is Tuesday a good day for y'all?
Tuesday is best for me.
And then 4 to 6. That looked good. See some head nods, no shakes, no.
I prefer to do 3 to 5.
3 to 5? There's nothing wrong with that. Is that, as long as we get on the calendar, I mean, you know, is that the preference? 3 to 5? Okay.
My wife will appreciate it.
Thank you, David.
All right.
So are we meeting on the 12th at 3 and not 4?
You mean the
26.
I mean, excuse me.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yes, we can do that.
I concur.
I would ask for that, I do have a 2 to 3, could we do 3:30? You mind I mean, I just want a combination, go 3:30 on this particular day. I'm meeting with some people I've been trying to get with for like 2 months.
That's fine with me.
3:30, okay, that day, and then we'll go to 3 from now on. We'll book the rest of the time for 3. Okay, while we're talking about schedules, let's go ahead and, so that would make us the 10th, and then the next meeting after that would be the 24th, the day before Christmas. I'm not sure anyone's got the heart to even put that out there.
I'm
So-
dedicated, not that dedicated.
Okay, so then so our next meeting would be January 7th.
Do we want to go that long, family? I'm not proposing any Christmas week, but
Well, the next Tuesday is New Year's Eve day.
how about 2 weeks in a row? 10th and 17th.
we may or may not have a commissioner meeting that day. We probably will have.
January
Well, we may
7th
not.
is your commissioners meeting, January 7th is your first Tuesday, so it's a commissioners meeting.
We're on the 7th then.
Oh, I thought you had to, I'm sorry.
Oh, so you're saying meet this
They're saying that.
7th?
It says they can't support it.
I think one thing I just wanted to mention, for staff to support the twice-a-month meeting, we don't really have it. And I very much recommend we stay with one meeting a month plus committee meetings, because we're going to have to support committee meetings too. So I am not comfortable with regular twice-a-month meetings. It's in terms of really being able to keep up with it, and everyone has other responsibilities. So in terms of looking at wanting to get into this and, get down into the details, the perspective that I would ask you to consider is, we're building here, and for at least the next 6 months, we are very much in a learning and starting to build mode. There's not a crisis, because we're operating as a county department. So there's not the urgency behind a lot of these that there will be when you're operating more independently. So I do want to express that concern just on the staffing side, that's going to be, in other words, if you want to meet in 2 weeks, we're not going to have any new information for you.
Other than the pool stuff.
Other than
the pool stuff.
Other than the pool stuff. Was South
South BUNCOMBE is available at 4 o'clock, but the space is booked at 6 p.m.
That's good discipline
That breaks
for
my
us.
heart. We'll have to-
We started, we go 3:30 to 5:30.
Because if we go see the pool,
Okay.
So, David, could we just do, in the first few meetings, do extended meetings, to accommodate once a month? Instead of it being 2 hours, it'd be 2.5 or something. Flexible.
I just think if we don't have a clear beginning and an end, we're not as disciplined, and I think really 2 hours is a,
Yes.
I admire your zeal, but, yeah, I mean, but I think a beginning and an end was good, because then you know to get cracking and doesn't allow, that's all, I'm just,
Well, what about the frequency? I mean, I think we need to, go ahead.
oh, so what if at our next meeting, we decide our committees, and then we don't need staff, we can have our committee, and then we don't need the staff, and then we can email staff what our committee talked about. Would that work out?
I think when the committee meets, you're going to need staff.
Okay.
Now, you may only need one, and that's why I'm perfectly comfortable with 2 meetings a month, but that second meeting is committees rather than the full board.
So would that,
Okay.
would that work with you to have one staff person there, committee meeting?
Absolutely.
So what if we met, this next one at the pool, and then we meet one time in December, to take the pressure off a little bit, and then we come back in January and do whatever?
I suggest we decide that on December the 10th.
Probably a good idea.
Let's get done what we need to get done, because we're on a bit of a deadline, and then let's decide about that.
Yeah.
I think it's a very valid point.
So December 10, East Asheville, is that doable?
December 10, East Asheville really won't work for a meeting spot. Well, we'll try. The city gave what had been the community room to Leaf as office space, so
Yeah.
let me see if I can make arrangements for us to get in.
Or if there's a place nearby even.
Is there a community center in that?
It is the community center space that's been leased out. I think they have let us do programs in that. Let me try. I think we can work that out.
I guess there is another angle. It is in their interest to let us, because they're,
We might even be able
Yeah, I
to
can't
get fire
imagine.
ants.
Oh, no, y'all can't go.
but
They have a
I'll
tiny
leave it
break.
at that. Okay. So it looks like we've tentatively set up the next 2 meetings. And then let's think about, I think we need to ponder what Ed's told us here and the way we do our committees and the way we meet. So I hear everybody ready to go, and I like that. I don't want to stand for that. Ellen, have you have something?
I was just going to say, in effect, we have until June to get truly organized. So maybe meeting every 2 weeks is not quite so urgent.
Okay. Well, we do, but there's a deadline. I think we're talking about early year to do a budget, which we'll have to have probably have to have a budget retreat or something to familiarize. This is the budget, the way it's been done. This is what maybe what you might want to think about. And I think this first year it's going to be a lot of status quo, but as we go through the status quo, I do think it's part of our job to be thinking about, well, next time I want to go over here instead of over there. Like I was throwing out the Boise thing. I want you to think this. I want you to think, what is it we really want to do? George said it real good when the meeting started. We got to decide what is it we want to do. And then we got to figure out, can we afford it? And if we can not afford it, okay, what else do we want to do? And just be working that way.
But I think that's why people seem to support this entity, is because they expect big things from it. I don't think they expect the status quo. But you're right, we need several months to figure out what it is that we have, what it is we want to do, and then we can start doing that. But I think 3 years down the road, we're still in status quo.
Yeah.
Right.
It'll be a failure. That's right.
I tell you, one of the things that we had as commissioners, we had a retreat around the capital plan, because, I mean, again, there's just so much on there.
Yeah.
So if our, first 2 or 3 meetings, if we're really just having great conversations around that capital plan, that's not bad. I mean, that's not a bad thing, and hearing from staff and each other and community and whatever, and because there may be some other things that, we decide we want to put on there, that go into the prioritization. Doesn't necessarily mean, we're going to draw a line in the sand, we got to be done by a certain amount of time. But
all right.
It's great discussion.
I agree.
I would also like to add to that, David, that I really value all of us together hearing this information and talking, because that feels to me as informative and educational and right as dividing into a lot of committees right now. So
I think that's really, yeah.
Good. All right, let me redirect us to tab 2, the rules of procedure. We have talked about, and I think we've reached a tentative agreement at 3:30 on at least for the next 2 meetings, and we're going to defer final decisions about frequency, I think, and how we do the committees. We need to be thinking about that. Is there anything? Let's just run through the tab. The preamble kind of gives the basics of how we came to be. Our fiscal year is pretty well set. Regular meetings, we've talked about that. We will. Right now, it's the second Tuesday. We can change that. And I think we've said 3:30, except for, I think we said 4 for the next one.
It's actually 3 and 3:30.
3:30 for the next one.
3:30 for the next one, and 3 to 5.
Oh, 3. Okay, 3. I'm sorry.
Matt,
See?
you keep this.
3 to 5. Yep. Okay. Gotcha. That's good. So it'll be 3.
just capture all these things and that's what the points of order to accept.
Yeah. If you're ready.
No, I'm just asking that question.
Okay. If it's all right, let's just look through organizational meeting. We've done that. On page 2, the agenda. Basically, this is saying that Ed and I kind of set the agenda. And any individual wish to make a request to Ed, the request should be in writing. And Ed and I will be talking about the agenda, and we'll jointly decide what goes on there. Agenda packages, sometimes that's an issue. You want to get them in time. Well, what's enough time?
says the night before.
Is that enough time for you?
It had to be.
Well, it doesn't have to be.
It's not enough time for me.
Okay.
I was gonna say 3 days.
I think 3 days.
I recommend just change that. If we're gonna stay on Tuesday, Thursday,
Oh,
it
yeah.
says Wednesday here, if you would change it to Thursday, I think that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday to
Yeah, that's great.
You want it
I just didn't.
Okay, so you'll get it
Oh,
late.
oh, we're good.
Before Monday.
We're
Well,
going.
actually, you just have it, it says by 5 o'clock on Thursday. Why don't we do noon? Noon, all right? Noon, so that would give you a half-day Wednesday, or Thursday, all-day Friday, the weekend, and then all-day Monday, and then almost a day on Tuesday.
Noon on Thursday.
Yeah, that good with everybody? Okay. Any two members can move a consent agenda items. Is that, well, we don't, yeah, we'll probably, I don't know how much consent we'll be doing because we are on uncharted. It's not like we've done things this way in the past, but I'd say just leave that in there. There probably will be a time that will be, I don't know how many consent items we'll have, at least initially.
So how is discussion just pretty much, will we have a kind of discussion of, for example, if there's 2 or 3 ideas out there, or will those just go through you and the head to go on an agenda?
I think to give everybody time to think about it, it's better to do it that way. I've been on boards where we say, well, tell me what you're thinking at the end. Could do that. I'm trying to be real loose. I'm not going to be real tight on the procedural because I think we all need to hear from each other. I think that's more important than any procedure we might do. So I can do it the other way, but I think I'm going to be a little bit more loosey-goosey right now because I think I need to hear, and then there'll be a rhythm we'll establish here how we do things, I'm sure.
Well, I think the point of clarification you made about it being on the agenda a few days, giving people an opportunity to look at it, is definitely preferred.
Yeah. And I don't know, let's see, is there a provision, I know on our board, if all people want something on it, they can add it, but only if it's unanimous.
Yeah, I think that's a good.
I think there will be things that, like fireworks sometimes come up. And I don't know, I think commissioners will still approve fireworks, but there may be something that has some time sensitivity, and everybody says, is it okay to put this on there? Yeah, go ahead. We can vote.
It's expressed in chairman and
Okay, we're on,
no,
that's to add an item. Why don't we add, I would suggest maybe we add that by unanimous. Is that good with everybody? You can add something to the agenda, even at the meeting time, because there may be sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that would really go under 4E, I think, where it says, may add an item, unanimous consent by all members is required for addition after the agenda is printed. How about that? You don't want to be blindsided. That's the big thing. I never want anybody to come in and say, oh, I didn't think about that. Boy, I might have come to a different result if I had more time to think about it. So the only way I want to do that is if everybody's in agreement. Is that all right with people to add that?
Well, and I think too, what's good about that is for the public, they're not blindsided either.
Right. Two-way street. Good point. All right. Public comment. Are we okay with this? I'll just kind of go through it until somebody tells me stop. Public comment. I think we should have public comment. I know Kim McGuire was here, or Kim McQueen was here. I think it's always important to hear from the public. We usually do that first.
I like it first.
You like it first?
Yeah.
And then when people say, well, here's what you need to be doing, we have a chance to process that before we do anything. You can do it either way. You can do it afterwards or before. I think, some people want to come tell you what they think and then go leave. And I think they have that right. Is that good with people? Good with Karen? Okay.
David, isn't it appropriate to require that or encourage that in written form as opposed to coming in and doing it?
Public comment?
Yeah.
I think it should be as easy as possible.
Huh?
I think it should be easy as possible.
It's easy for them to come to do it, so they can do it either way, basically, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Either way, in what sense now?
Writing, they can write a letter, or they can come in and speak.
Yeah. I think anything we get, I would scan and send to everybody. I think it's fair to do that. Or notify
They're
you.
comfortable coming in and actually speaking to the board, having a concern, so they could put it in, they could send a letter in writing, or they could bring it to the meeting and hand it to you, or whatever. I haven't been on a board like this where you have public comment as sort of a built-in thing, and they all do with this commission, so I'm not sure what that's not clear of this culture as much as y'all are.
I think you don't want to do anything to restrict it. You want
Right.
people to know that they can come in and speak, and that if they want to, a lot of times sometimes in commission meetings, they'll leave you a written copy of something, so they want to come and give you something in writing.
Okay.
But
I would steer away from, if they want to come personally with something and they're in public comment, but they don't feel comfortable speaking, I think that's one thing. But I think we could take a lot of time reading a lot of things people sent to us, because we all know how brave people are sometimes on their computer and not so much face to face. So I think we could end up reading a lot of comments if we did it that way.
Well, one thing about public comment, and I guess Sherry and I have been doing this for 17 years, I really don't think, we're here to listen to people, and it's not like we engage them.
Right.
Now, if they have a question, we might refer and say, would you look into this? But I don't think it's like, no, you're wrong, no, you're right, yeah, I agree with you, boy, that's really smart, you said that's really dumb, you said it. It's not a dialogue, it's a public comment where they tell us what they're thinking, and we don't poll I'm about to poll the jury, I say that enough, poll the commission or the authority. How would you vote? How do you feel? How are you going to do it? It's not that. It's like comment on what we're taking up. And if it's not what we take up, we don't want to hear it. Not because it's not important, but it's just, that's not our role. Ellen?
But we don't want to invite it over the web, over email.
No.
No. And I think if someone gave us something in writing, we would not be, you would read that after the meeting, probably. You would probably not, we would not stop the meeting to read it. They could articulate, well, I'm complaining about the Zorger pool, and I think you should have done this a long time ago. You're a bunch of crumbs for not doing it before. Then, okay, we'll read that, and we'll take that into account.
don't you think a lot of those will still come in as commissioner questions, and Kathy will get them, and if we get them, we'll probably address them here, a lot of the emails and stuff.
Yeah, we'll be scanning and sending to everybody, so you know what the temperature is out there. Okay, so public comment, pretty much follow the rules. 3 minutes, I think that's in there, yeah, 3 minutes, unless the authority wants to hear more. If a member of this authority wants to engage, you're entitled to. I'll give some leeway, but it's not a dialogue. It's to listen to the public, not to debate. And other than just, if there's questions, maybe specifically answer or direct it to whoever can answer.
You say 3 minutes?
Yeah, this is, we didn't number it. Actually, it's 5B, the last phrase there.
It's on there.
Is that, and, okay, order of business, kind of run it like that. That's, anybody having heartburn about anything?
So we have closed sessions.
Sir?
We have a closed session.
We probably will. We'll probably take up some personnel things. I don't see it. I think we might when we talk about hiring a lawyer. When we do that, we talk about terms. There will be some personnel things even with county employees, but there won't be a lot.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
What is the difference in the 3 minutes in 5B, in the 5 minutes in 4A? At the end of that first paragraph, in both paragraphs, it's the last sentence. Time limit in 5A, and 4A says, time limit for an individual representative addressing the authority for it to be 5 minutes. And over here it says, someone addressing is 3 minutes. Are they different
circumstances? It's public versus staff, isn't it?
I believe that in 4A, this is something where a group or a member of the public has requested actual agenda time. And if they were added to the agenda, in other words, if the chairman agreed to add to the agenda. So it's a
They've been
different
worked out because
circumstance.
they've been processed to the agenda, okay.
Okay, good catch, that's good catch. All right, powers of the presiding officer. Yeah. Okay, anything, well, our attorney will be our parliamentarian. Okay, anything problem with those? Action by the board, we will do some formalities like, I think, sometimes I'll ask for consensus, but I think it's probably better to do motions. Then it's clear that we actually, everybody has a say in it. Any problems with the motions, and action by the board procedure? All right, let's see, what comes after the 3 I's? I guess that's 8 and 9, procedural motions. Yeah, boy. Yeah, okay. Any questions about that? 10, ordinances, adoption, budget.
Okay, I'm confused on budget ordinance. Budget ordinance. Do we actually adopt the budget? Here we do? Okay.
And let me, Dr. Green, let me just make sure. So I understand the law. We adopt the budget, and then they can, the county ratifies but cannot change our budget.
That's not exactly the way it works.
Okay.
The county has to set your tax rate, and if you recommend a budget that takes 3.5 cents or 4 cents, they can set the rate at a different amount. They don't go in and change your line items, but the commissioners can set the rate at something different than what it takes to fund your organization.
So we say, okay, so right now we're at 3.5. So if we come in 3.5 or less, that's going to be it.
Well,
Or can they say, we don't like the way, we don't want you to spend money on the zoning pool, we're going to take away that?
Usually, when I think about fire districts, which this is similar to that, the commissioners don't go into line items in the different organizations, but they can say, we're just not going to fund that much this year. We set the tax
But
rate.
we've already set the tax rate for this year.
Oh, yeah, but I'm sorry. Once the budget's adopted this year is the next budget for me. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
but as for the budget, we're going to set for next year. We're
Yeah.
talking two different
Once it's-
things.
yeah.
Right now, we have 3.5 cents to
Yeah.
spend. And the commission can't change that.
No, once
They've
the
already,
budget's set.
we have, the 3 of us and the 4 others have said, you have 3.5 cents is the most you can spend. And the tradition has been, we have never gone in and said, well, you can't do line item number 451. We're not going to do that. That's been our custom. That's one reason we wanted commissioners on this to begin it, to get it started.
But the commissioners could say, it's going to be 2 cents or it could be 5 cents. I mean, the commissioners can.
Yeah, they can say, we disapprove of the budget you did last time, and so we don't want you to build East Asheville. We want to really get on Ed and make him sad. So
Yeah,
we're
they
going to
could
cut
just-
out East Asheville and cut the amount that would have needed to continue that project. They could do that.
They could just change it. They don't even need all that. They could just say, it's going to be 2 cents, right?
That's exactly right. Then it would come back to this board and you'd have to figure out what can you get done for 2 cents.
But typically, if a budget ordinance is in line with the priorities of the county, and it is within the 3.5 cents, then and it goes to the commissioners, it would probably be unusual for the commissioners to not approve that.
I would say, based on the personalities, it is extremely unlikely that will be an issue, but it is technically a possibility.
I've done 20 budgets and I can think of twice when the fire districts brought their tax rate recommendations in or requests in and they weren't approved. I mean, and that's 21 tax rates a year for 20 years, so it doesn't happen very often.
But you know how Ellen and Joe are.
Where's?
This, behind tab 4 in our notebooks, that is the budget, right? Page 1, tab 4.
That's,
This is this year's budget.
that's the very general budget. On your table, you have a detailed budget. It's more,
And is that in here also, the detailed budget?
it's on your table.
It's on my table.
That's the first one you're looking at. Oh, wait a minute, no, it's actually,
You got the pie chart one, and then that's the line item detail. And that's up to date as of last Thursday.
Thanks.
yeah. Okay. All right, well, let's continue to trudge through the,
I have a question.
Yes,
about
sir.
the procedures. Maybe I'm overlooking it, but I don't see any reference to the duties of the vice chair or the secretary.
I think,
Do we need those or do we not? I don't know what the.
substitute when I'm not here, obvious.
Yeah.
Secretary will take record of the minutes and handle and funnel any requests that we get through the department. I think it's better to I would recommend we don't spell out because I think it will evolve, but the obvious one would be covered
Okay.
and, it's pretty vague on the commission also.
Right.
There's been years the vice chair's done nothing, because the chairman was very active. There've been years where the chairman's gone on some, and they've run meetings and they've been pretty active, so I think that's kind of personality driven. Good question. All right, public comment period, we're up to 13. How we do public comment. Closed session, we'll identify that early in the meeting if we're going to need a closed session. So if there's any need to change, we're running long or something, we'll try to, I can't tell you in 2 hours we're going to just say stop, but I can tell you that's the goal, and I'll always ask the board, do you want to continue? We'll try to, if we get close, if we've got a long closed session, we may want to adjourn earlier and defer the last item to the next meeting. I'll be very mindful. I know that you have lives outside of this, you're very busy people. And I'll always try to be considerate of that. Public hearings, there will be possible public hearings, probably not a lot this year, but in the future we do have, as the enabling legislation does, we do have the, let's see here, some authorities that will be necessary to have public hearings on by law. Our attorney will tell us about those. Broadcast meetings, that's probably something we could discuss. If you want these televised, we could do that.
They can be seen on YouTube.
Be seen on YouTube, Jerry Rice, person Jerry Rice. I would say probably not, but that's up to the board. If you want to make arrangements to be arranged, televised.
I know. It is out there, it's a public record.
It would be, since it would move every week, every other week or every other week, it would be hard. That's true. More instructed, I'm sure we could arrange that. Okay, here and then we'll just go forward. Quorum, that's pretty much spread out. Minutes, Angie will be doing that. Directions to staff. Anything give people heartburn? Anybody want any changes? I think there's one change we said 3 o'clock, and let's instead of packing it varied locations, varied recreation and library, varied culture and recreation location, cultural and recreational locations. within Buncombe County, of course.
I move that we accept these procedures and rules of order, subject to the changes that we've all agreed to make.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The rules as adopted, and if we could just, I'd say, can we just take these out and get a replacement with the actual rules in there?
We'll have that for you next week.
All right, very good. Thank you. That's always hard. I was on a board that didn't do it for a year.
Oh, gosh.
We just couldn't agree. Poor leadership.
I was on the floor, North took 6 months to come up with a mission statement.
Okay, the next on the agenda, let's see, let's get the time. Let's check here. 6 o'clock. We have 2 other matters on the agenda. What's the pleasure of the board? Is there a motion to defer them to the next meeting and to be considered with the next agenda?
Yeah.
Okay, it's been a motion by George, second by Eleanor. Is there any discussion of that motion?
If we're meeting at a facility, we're still having regular meeting business?
Yes. Oh, yes, that will, I would, oh, that, good thought. When we're at TC, we won't be at Zoringer Pool. Of course, it'll be dark early. What's the pleasure of the board? Do you want to go after the meeting, or want to take maybe 15 minutes? It's probably, how long would it take to go from the library? I mean, it's just maybe 5-minute walk.
Seriously, you could
Yeah.
walk there, or it's a very short drive. It's just the other side of the T.C. Robertson campus from where the library is.
Why don't we do this? When we go to a place, why don't we just take the first 20 minutes, we'll tour it. Is that doable?
So we're going to meet
I think
at
we
the
need
center
to-
and then go to the,
Yeah, because you'll be giving us a presentation on the pool at that time.
Yeah. So if that's okay, then I guess that's another, before public comment, we'll do a 20-minute tour, whatever, or less of the facility. If we're at the facility, it may not take 20 minutes. Is that all right, everyone? Okay. Okay, we've deferred that. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, can I just mention what's in front of people?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you mind?
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry to
No,
interrupt.
please. No, please.
This is the beginning, to put together some of the information that you mentioned at your workshop, that you wanted a listing of all the parks in the city of Asheville and the municipalities. That's what this is the beginning of, with the addresses. There were lots of conversations we can have down the line. That then was translated to the map that's attached. Now, eventually we'll have it much bigger so you can see it, but this was the beginning of putting together that information that was asked for. And also, do you have an extra one of those, Brian? Also, Mr. Kern, I misspoke. You asked about prioritizations of maintenance and repairs, and I totally overlooked the fact that we had done that when I told you we didn't have it, and I apologize. But this is the correction to what I told you. It was a list of repair and maintenance requests for our facilities that we prioritized as we closed out our summer programs and we head towards the fall. So that's what this is.
Super.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
doing
Great
this.
work.
this is fabulous.
Yes.
Great work.
And I do have the digital copies of the maps and the master plans that,
Those overlays?
not overlays yet, but the maps that you got in paper, not yet, in paper copies last time, if you would prefer to have them on a CD.
All right. Yeah, I think everybody wants.
Yep.
Yeah, got enough for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Just in the flavor of things, I think I would ask for public comment since we have. Any public comment tonight? All right, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, It would-
Yes, I'll recognize Mr. Bryant. Yes.
thank you. There would be one consideration. I know yous are doing it out of convenience for y'all, but public at 3 o'clock in the day is not very convenient. So just take that in consideration.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Any more business or any other items? We've got either a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Karen, second by Helen. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. By 7-0 vote, we are adjourned. Thank you. Great meeting. We're going to